All right. Well, welcome again, everyone. I'm Allison Werner. I'm the Executive Director of the River Alliance of Wisconsin, and we're thrilled to have you join us this evening for the virtual showing of Running Free, the Baraboo River Restoration Story. We are so proud to host this along with our partners, Sauk County Land and Resources and Environment Department and the Friends of Baraboo River. As many of you know, River Alliance has been around for almost 30 years. We've been helping people protect and restore rivers all across the state. And one of our early programs was helping communities have a dialogue about whether or not to remove small dams, dams that became in disrepair, obsolete dams that weren't in use anymore, of how to have that community dialogue of the pros and cons, what are the benefits to the health of the river and health of the community by removing these small dams. One of those dams we were part of was the dams on the Baraboo River. And so with the 20th anniversary of the removal of the last dam on the Baraboo, we are, again, so proud tonight to be part of sharing this great film that several folks worked very hard on to produce and put together in that celebration to share this story. So I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Schlupp from the Sauk County Land Resources and Environment Department to give some background about how this film came to be and why they wanted to share this story. So Melissa, take it away.
Thanks, Allison. Thanks everybody for attending. We're really excited to be able to show this. So it was earlier this year when Joe VanBerkel approached our office to talk about their plans for celebrating the 20th anniversary of the final dam removal on the Baraboo River. And he had just asked us to participate in their Riverfest celebration that they had planned for October. But it had gotten me thinking about how this was such a significant event and that we should try to capture some of that history while we could. And I thought a film would be appropriate. We were making plans to host the Conserve Sauk Film Festival in the fall as well. And I thought, I kind of knew we'd probably have a smaller budget for that event. And that we would maybe be looking for local films. And I thought that this would be a good opportunity. So I started to kind of pick Joe's brain about just different people to kind of maybe work with and approach. We really wanted it to be a professionally put together film. And so that meant we had to find some funding for it. So I started to look at different grant opportunities and other organizations that would partner with us. So we were able to secure some funding through donations and some grants. And then we started to look at what we wanted to put into the film. So we kind of put together a little outline of what we wanted to discuss. And then we had to find people who were willing to do it, to be interviewed. And then, we partnered with a Sauk County Foundation, and they already had a videographer that they worked really closely with. So it was really nice for us to just continue to work with him. And he had a drone, so he was able to capture some really beautiful footage of the area. And yeah, we scheduled interviews for a day, and we interviewed, I think, 5 or 6 folks. And then we also worked with the Sauk County Historical Society to pull historical images from, settlement days all the way up until the final dam removal. And it just kind of all came together. It was definitely a collaborative project. And, I think Joe and Todd for sure contributed a lot of that great oral history on the project. So it came together to be a really nice project, and we did premiere it at our film festival on November 6th, and we had some really good feedback on that. But we are reaching more people tonight by doing it virtually, so that's really exciting because not everybody was able to attend that event. So yeah, so I guess that's kind of what I have to say about how it came to be. And I'm just so thankful that this will live on, this, this will stay and we'll be able to share it for years to come. So,
Thank you, Melissa. In just a moment, we're going to hit play on the film. It's around 10 minutes long. Pro tip for Zoom is if you stop sharing your own video during this time, if you're doing that, your video camera, that often helps the video come through your system a little less glitchy, a little smoother. So I highly recommend that. So if you see us all disappear, we'll pop back in after the film is over. But with no further ado, here's Running Free, the Baraboo River Restoration Story.
The Baraboo River is the fourth largest tributary of the Wisconsin River, and its watershed is about 420,000 acres. It travels through 4 counties before it reaches the Wisconsin River just below Portage, and most of that length is in Sauk County. The Baraboo River has been used by mankind for thousands of years. The evidence right along the banks of the Baraboo River with the mounds and effigy mounds shows human habitation here for at least 2,000 years. And then fast forward to the Ho-Chunk Indians that had settlements along the Baraboo River in the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries. And then fast forward again to the late 1830s, 1840s when white settlements started along the Baraboo River. The native indigenous people here used the river for thousands of years before white settlement. And of course, the white settlers came, heard the rapids, especially here in the Baraboo area, and to them that meant the river is falling in elevation, and this would be a great place to start building dams to harness the water power. Long before electricity, the water power was a free, quote-unquote, natural resource, and eventually 11 dams were built on the Baraboo River from start to finish. 5 of those were right here in the Baraboo Valley, where the river drops over 40 feet from one side of Baraboo to the other side of Baraboo. The first mills along the Baraboo River were built to cut wood. Sawmills were usually the first thing built to harvest a natural resource and start making money. Immediately followed usually by a grist mill. You had to eat. And then later things followed: factories, tanneries, furniture making shops, things like that. And in later years, the mills that were there, it was cheaper to run them with electricity or other, steam power or something, and dams are expensive to keep up. So oftentimes the decision to remove a dam was economic. The dam removals, some were controversial. I mean, people had grown up for generations having these mill ponds behind dams. They were used to these large expanses of waters. One of the last dams to come out was the Waterworks Dam here in Baraboo, which impounded the water near Circus World Museum. So I know when that dam came out, it was a bit of a, what is this going to look like? It's going to be different.
My involvement started with just enjoying the river. I worked for the County Conservation Department, worked in partnership with a Soil Conservation Service technician, Dean Steinhorst. The first I heard of dam removal was from Dean, who was on the Parks Commission. He brought up, wouldn't the river be nicer if the dams were gone? A thought that had never crossed my mind, never realized it was even a possibility, a remote possibility. So right from the start, he and I talked about it more at coffee breaks and situations like that. He worked his way up, retired from the Soil Conservation Service, was elected mayor of the city, and in that role, he had a handle on the dam issue because the city owned the Waterworks Dam, the first dam brought to the forefront for debate on whether that should be removed or not. We had the 5 dams, but the first of those was out in the mid-70s, so we were down to 4. 3 of them were in the city limits of Baraboo. The 4th was in Laval. So our concentration was the city of Baraboo on the 3 dams that were here. Partly because this is where the rapids are in the Baraboo River. This is where the ideal fish habitat is. The city-owned one was not producing any electricity, so it was just an obstruction in the river. We called people and talked to them one-on-one, started putting articles in the paper, things like that, anything we could get out there to kind of teach people what it would be like or why this would be an improvement in the river. The community was real concerned about the impacts on the river. We heard the ducks are going to all leave the river. We heard the fish are all going to wash downstream. The river's going to dry up. All kinds of various theories about what would happen when the dams were removed. None of those came true, but there was the resistance. The City Water Commission was the lead on, because they actually had ownership of the dam. The City Council had to make the decision after the commission. That was pretty much the organizations that were involved. DNR, of course, the River Alliance. After that dam was removed, then the involvement really grew. That's when Sauk County Foundation got involved, when the Fish and Wildlife Federation, just a long list of partners who could see, that this was a good thing and there were benefits to be had.
In Wisconsin, we still have a law on the books that says if it is determined that the dam is not safe, the owner has two choices. They can either repair it, or they need to find somebody else who will undertake the operation, or there needs to be a move forward to remove it. You can't just let it sit in disrepair. But certainly the cost to repair the dam was 2 to 3 times what it would cost to remove it.
The concern about safety with low-head dams is widespread, and the first and foremost has to do with the hydraulics of water over the top carrying a person or people, with them even a boat. 2 women in separate incidents died in the summer of 2001, shortly before the final dam was removed. And bitterly, and unfortunately, regrettably, they died where the final dam was.
Dam removal in Wisconsin continues to be a big issue, and frequently for the same reasons that originally sparked the conversation in Baraboo. That is that you've got a old, obsolete, uneconomical dam. In some cases, you have an owner that doesn't have the wherewithal to fix it. In some cases, there's no owner. It's abandoned entirely, and it's in disrepair.
The money to pay for the removal of the dams was a fraction overall of what it would have been like to keep them up. Where did the money come from? In part from the owner. Certainly the city of Baraboo put some of its money in. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service had funds, had matching funds available in some cases. The National Fish and Wildlife Foundation played an enormous role in funding the removal of these dams and the proper rehabilitation, shall we say, of the dam locations. Water quality improvement often follows dam removal. Not necessarily immediately, but generally within 1, 2, 3 months, which is pretty quick. When dams are removed, one of the most noticeable environmental improvements is the fish returning. The fish community diversifying to what it had been prior to the dams being there. Secondly, the availability of different parts of the habitat to support not just fish, but a wide range of other biota.
The dams had basically displaced habitats because they're typically constructed where there's fast current for energy production. And those tend to be some of the best habitats in a river system. There were 10 species of fish that lived only downstream of the Linden Mills Dam. Once the dams were removed, they quickly moved upstream, and so you've got a more diverse fishery and a more stable ecosystem, which results in a more sustainable fishery in general. The types of habitat that was affected by the dam should have been colonized by a different type of fish, and now we're seeing those fish, such as very environmentally sensitive darters, which are in the perch family, for instance, a lot of minnow species, walleyes and bass, and hopefully we're going to see sturgeon migrate up through this river as well.
The DNR had done a fishery study 18 months after the removal of the first waterworks dam. Before the dam was removed, there were 11 species of fish found in that impoundment. 18 months after that dam came out, there were 24 species. Before the dam came out, there were 3 smallmouth bass in that impoundment. After the 18 months after the dam came out, there were 87 smallmouth bass shocked in that impoundment area. I either walk the dog or paddle the river every day, basically. And every day I'm on that walk or paddling. There are fishers on the river nowadays. Before the dams were removed, the only time you saw fishing people on the river were kids fishing for carp, just because they couldn't get anywhere else to fish for species that were worth keeping. I think it's exciting, all the revitalization efforts that have happened. I mean, Citizens for Waterfront Revitalization was formed about a year after the first dam came out to purposely look at revitalizing the river corridor and expanding the use of it. The Riverwalk is now over 6 miles long. It's got the pedestrian bridge. There's the distillery that's been built. There's a new apartment complex going up. A lot of those things that we thought would happen fairly quickly after revitalization of the river have taken longer because of the economy and whatever factors, but you're seeing it now and you're seeing it significantly.
We decided that as a civic group, we didn't need to have money in our coffers, so what could we do for the community that would give everybody an opportunity to use this? So that's how we came up with our Baraboo River Walk project. It gets a lot of use. Lots of runners, I see bikers, just groups of people walking their dogs. It's a great asset to the community. I'm just very happy that the dams were removed. I know that there was a lot of resistance to that, but I think overall, because of what we were able to do with the Riverwalk, it's a great asset for our area. And we have a beautiful city, we have a beautiful area, so it all came together very nicely.
The Baraboo River dam removals, which freed up the main stem, is an international example of success for several reasons. One is the collaborative partnership, unlike nearly any other dam removal enterprise you can find. Secondly, the embedding of science into it. The researchers who studied the sediments on the Baraboo and the fisheries researchers established a body of work that is of significance around the planet for dam removal.
The Baraboo River restoration is really, to this day, pointed to as an example of how to do dam removal and the benefits to a local community. It is certainly one of the longest stretches of river unobstructed by dams restored in the history of the United States. But how this was done is still something that's studied, talked about, pointed to in terms of river restoration.
People can't believe it's 20 years later. But then when you look back at all that's been accomplished over those 20 years and how changed it is, it's really remarkable.
And then hearing the rapids again for the first time since the late 1830s, we can hear what those early settlers and what the Ho-Chunk and what the mound builders all heard through this area, the rapids of the Baraboo River. Now the resurgence of kayaking and canoeing has just brought a whole different life to the Baraboo River.
One of the first places in the United States that had electricity was Baraboo. It powered the lighting in Baraboo. So that's significant, and you have to honor that, and you have to, respect that. At the same time, it's really important to drive home to people the huge benefits with river restoration. There's so many very complicated, difficult issues relative to water and habitat restoration. Removing a dam, it's really simple. You do it right, the river gets better. It's a fact. But getting people to appreciate that, I have yet to experience a community where 5 years after the removal, if you went back and asked people what they think about it, that they didn't say, yeah, I was not in favor of this at the time, but looks pretty good now. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Melissa and Joe and Todd and all of the folks who were involved in producing this amazing film with this story. It's such an important story to tell, and I hope it inspires other communities that are, going through this decision-making process right now, how to improve the health of their river, and if removing, again, a small obsolete dam might be one way to go about that in their communities. Um, so what we're going to do is we're going to give Todd, Joe, and Melissa some opportunity here to just chat about a few things up front. One, I was teasing them, reflections and what was on the cutting room floor that you want to make sure was still said about this project, or dam removal in general. And Todd, I'm going to start with you. For folks that don't know, Todd is currently the Deputy Secretary for the Department of Natural Resources. He's also one of the former executive directors for the River Alliance of Wisconsin, and Todd's worn many hats in government and nonprofits related to water and rivers for decades. And Todd, I know you've seen other success stories. You kind of alluded to it in the film of communities that go back 5 years later, usually don't regret these decisions. So I'm also looking for some examples of other communities that you've seen have really positive success stories with dam removal, either here in Wisconsin or around the country. If folks want to go learn about other communities, where should they go poke around and learning about? And don't forget to unmute first, Todd.
Thanks. My apologies. My video looked fine a little while ago. I don't know why it's now dark, but oh well. The joys of Zoom, right?
No worries, we can hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of examples across the country. Wisconsin has had a lot of dam removals, Pennsylvania, a lot of dam removals, but if you look, here in Wisconsin, there's a number of examples. The Woolen Mills Dam up in West Bend, Fulton Dam on the Ohio River. There's just a number of dams across the state that have come out, and as a result, they've been developed recreational amenities in those communities. In West Bend, there is a full park complex. It's been there for 20 years now with soccer fields and hiking trails, etc. But the bigger ones that you look at across the country, the Edwards Dam out in Maine, where among other things, the American shad are running up that river. And really has been a fisheries success story there. There's several examples of dam removals out west that have really been a benefit. The Truckee River out in Nevada, et cetera. Everywhere that you go, the same sort of scenario plays out. There is concern about what is going to happen when the structure comes out. But if it is done right, as I said in the film, another way to put it is, you remove the dam, the fish will come. That's what we see time and again, both here in Wisconsin and across the country. And it is impressive how quickly, if you give Mother Nature a chance, it turns out she's pretty good at restoring herself. So take that chunk of concrete out of that body of water that is supposed to be flowing, and lo and behold, not very long after that, the water quality improves, the fishery improves, and the benefits to the local community become pretty evident.
Thank you, Todd. Joe, a couple questions that popped up in the chat are a nice segue to talk about fisheries, and a piece that I know you can talk about. There's a couple questions about sturgeon, right? The film talked about, wouldn't it be great to have more sturgeon in the river? And I know at the river celebration event you organized in October, there was a release of sturgeon. So if you could share a little bit about, current state of fisheries and especially sturgeon. The other question was, if you could remind us how many miles of river were opened up to be free flowing once the dams were out on the Boo? And if you don't have that number off the top here, that's all right. I kind of remember ish, but you might recall better.
Well, and if not, I can just make it up. You know, the overall river is 140 miles. The first dam from the from its mouth at the Wisconsin is probably 20 miles in. So there's probably 120 miles of river that was opened up with dam removal. Because the last dam removed, the most critical one, is only about 20 miles up from its junction with the Wisconsin. So about 120 extra miles. And that area contains some of the most critical rapids. That's why the dams were built there in the first place. The rapids produce the power, the rapids produce the fish. You have to settle one or the other. The sturgeon story, I don't have good numbers on that, and I wouldn't want to make those up. But we are hearing reports of sturgeon being caught as far upstream as Laval, which is probably 60 to 70 miles up the river stream. There's stories in the past of, they talk in one writing about it looked like a dam, but it was actually a row of sturgeons in the rapids. So it hopefully turns back into a sturgeon river. There have been stockings, but as everyone knows, they're a long lived species. It's something like 20 years just before they start breeding. So we'll see where we get in the long run, but it's sure encouraging.
Thank you, Joe. One of the other questions that's popped up in the chat is about the Hillsborough Dam. And I don't know if that's an issue you can speak to. Of the question here is looking for comments of the decision to rebuild the Hillsborough Dam after the 2018 flood.
Yeah, the Hillsborough Dam is on a small branch of the Baraboo River and is a real important, mill pond type situation for the village of Hillsborough, one of those very small communities without much else going for it. And the branch of the river above the Hillsborough Dam is fairly short. So there just wasn't a lot of interest or concern amongst the general public about opening that. And the city made their decision based on the value of what they see in the mill pond.
Thank you, Joe. Melissa, I want to give you an opportunity if you want to share any, again, additional reflections about the film or the response you've received from the community from the film or from this project.
So the interesting thing is of course I had only been in the area for about 8 years. And so I learned a lot. Joe had this little green tote bag that he would give to me, all of his memorabilia, I would say, of the dam removal. And he just had so many resources there that it was really great to actually read through and learn a little bit more about it. It was a fun project. I've never worked on, a film before. And so that was a lot of fun. And so kind of understanding like the editing process. And I mean, the hours of footage, and it's all crammed into, 15-minute film. So I just, a little bit of respect for the film, makers and their process too. Yeah, it was interesting to see like, people come together and kind of find some common ground and be civil with each other when it came time to actually for them to be removed, So, yeah, it was really great. And I really enjoyed the whole process. So I learned a lot, and I might not do it again next year, but I would maybe do it again in my career at some point. So.
Right. Well, and you in your role at Sauk County and or Joe might be able to answer this next question is, has there been an economic impact study since the dam was removed? I know, again, Joe, at the celebration event, you know, there were Chamber of Commerce folks there and such. I know it has been definitely this removal and the talk of the Riverwalk and such has been a benefit to the community, but has there actually been any study to show the direct connection between the improved river and the local economy?
There was one done very shortly after the dam removal, say maybe 5 years. And at that time, it had not had much impact. And I think I mentioned that in the film. It's one of the things that really surprised me is how long it's taken to see some of those developments and interest and enthusiasm over the river, how long it's taken people to look back at the river as a valuable resource. We always consoled ourselves that part of it was the 2008 crash. You know, we expected buildings and developments and hotels and apartments. Some of that is happening now. One of the things about the Baraboo is, the 5 miles through the city of Baraboo does have a real lot of public land along it. Circus World Museum has a good share of the riverbank. There's parks all along the riverbank. So a lot of the economic development is questionable whether it's pinned directly to the river or not. Hard to know. You know, half the people are here in town in the summer with canoes and kayaks on the roof of their car, but are they going to Devil's Lake, which is 2 miles away, or are they paddling the river, or are they doing both? So the direct connection is hard to analyze.
For sure. Thanks, Joe. John, I see your question there, but I'm going to take an opportunity to do something special. One of our participants in the Zoom audience is Sarah Johnson, and Sarah was River Alliance's first executive director and the executive director who was here when this project was happening. And I'd love to give Sarah the opportunity to share her reflections on this important project when she was here at River Alliance. So Sarah, you should be able to unmute yourself and share your video screen, and love for you to share a few words.
Allison, thank you. I think I'm unmuted and everybody
Yes.
can see, right? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, wow. Like, this project is so dear to my heart. I really appreciate it. And Melissa, thank you for contacting me to see if I could come out. I'm sorry that I couldn't, because I surely would have. And I also want to take just a moment to say hi to some friendly faces. Todd, nice to see you. Joe, good, so good to see you. I didn't see John Exo's name on here, but I want to also mention John Exo because John's support and working with me, it was just so critical at the time. And I don't know where John is now. So, yeah, it was a time that the River Alliance was young. We had done a lot of work in FERC, in Federal Energy Regulatory Relicensing. And we were just seeing all these dam owners coming up against, gosh, they'd never had to look at what are the environmental impacts of their dams before. And I mean, like, we were just seeing owners with eyes like saucers at, you mean I have liability? I mean, I didn't even know this has always been in the family. So it was just all over the board, but big dollar signs, it meant repair. And at the time, it was a knee-jerk reaction to just go for a repair. And so, we looked at other dams and other situations, and this was where we just felt like it was the most appropriate place that we could actually help, that we saw where we felt like we could bring some resources to the game and There were at the time, even for funders, it was scary for funders to fund dam removals. And I remember when the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, they gave us a grant for dam removal. It was the first time they had funded that. And so this was like how new this was, how scary this was, how potentially dangerous it was to put your eggs in that basket and say, hey, we're going to go do this. And, I think it comes down like so many things to, is everybody there for the right purpose? If it had been a different mayor, maybe it wouldn't have happened, right? So yeah, it was just a really exciting time. The private dam owner at Lennon Mills, had no idea what he was into. He knew that the local community wanted, they just wanted the dams to stay. And then we got to talk with him about the money that he was going to have to, like, fish ladders and things. It's like, what? Dam owners are like, what? So it was an exciting time. It felt like new ground. And we just really didn't know how it was going to turn out. And, some of what Todd was saying, I just want to share like one little thing. At that time, I was talking to groups when I was invited to talk on dam removal. And, one time the presenters said not to worry about anything because they had security, and they pointed over to a DNR warden that had a gun on his hip, and he said, everything's going to be fine. Well, that wasn't like most public meetings, and so that was kind of the context that this was taking place in. And it took a lot of people really willing and able to like have a vision for something different and be willing to go all in for it, because you don't do this halfway. And I guess the other thing I would say is just seeing this beautiful video. I got to witness firsthand the process part, the fundraising part, the can you get an invite? No invite. Don't come here. Like the week after the Waterworks Dam came out, I was down there, no identification of River Alliance, talking to somebody about, I was like, gosh, I can't believe stuff's already coming up. And this person was so unhappy. It was really clear. The last comment he made as he turned around was, somebody ought to be shot. So I was glad that at that point that I hadn't shared my name or anything or my affiliation because of our involvement with it. But I'm so thrilled to see what I got to see in this video. I'm on the West Coast now. And I think the last thing that I understand even more now than I did when I started doing dam removal, and it was partly because I had the opportunity to sit where I couldn't be there for when they first broke through on the dam, but I got to go down that night. And I sat there in tears because I was hearing the river run for the first time, the way it had run, what was it? 130 years? I don't remember now. How I can possibly remember that right? But I was just overwhelmed by it. And in the intervening years, I've really come to see dam removal as more representative of this next thing that I'm going to say than anything I can imagine. And that is that nature has this innate healing ability that we just don't even get. Really, sometimes I marvel at how we can't see nature's healing ability, and that removing the barriers, removing the things that keep things from functioning properly allows that natural ability to get rooted and take on. I mean, literally get rooted in the former impoundments, for example. So I'm thrilled to see this. It's just beautiful. It's been fun, you know, kind of watching a bit here and there from afar. But I can't wait to come down and be able to, you know, kayak and walk the path myself. I'm so happy for you all. I'm thrilled that to see Baraboo thriving this way, with this as the heart of the community.
Well,
Thanks for giving me a chance to say something, Allison.
you bet. Well, I'm so glad you were able to join us this evening and to share your reflections of this river and this work. And, you know, this project and so many that happened in Wisconsin starting decades ago with River Lions and Trout Unlimited and other partners. You know, Wisconsin had been a leader for many, many years across this nation on dam removal. And, you know, all these great success stories are because of these projects that started decades ago. And like you said, they were, you know, going into controversial places with tough conversations, communities. But when we have the results like this to show, again, not only the health of the river that comes, but the health of the community and the economy with it, such powerful stories. And again, this work started so many decades ago here and with other partners. So, so glad to have you able to join us tonight. I'm going to use this as a segue. So John's question that we put a pause on is, are there other dams in Wisconsin slated for removal right now? And the answer is yes. And I know the city of Burlington is considering what to do with the dam in their community, and several others across Wisconsin as well. Todd, I know one of the questions we often get at River Lions is, you know, when people are considering what happens to dam in their community, what is DNR's role and who do they reach out to at DNR? We often try to connect people to the right staff person, but could you speak a little to, you know, how the Department of Natural Resources works with communities or who are considering things like dam removal?
Sure, Allison. It's we have a dam safety program, and we inspect the dams. There's high hazard, significant hazard, and low hazard dams, about 3,500 of them across the state of Wisconsin. And either because somebody's reached out to us or because it's part of our inspection, again, as I noted in the film, if we determine that the dam is unsafe, we then notify the owner, and our statutes, state statutes in Wisconsin are still very clear. You have to do something. You either have to invest in fixing the dam so that it is safe, or you have to move forward with removal. And but the other thing that is important to note is that if they come forward and say, yes, we really would like to keep the dam, and here's the funding that is going to be available to do that, then they get to keep the dam. What drives a lot of those decisions, though, and there's a study done by University of Wisconsin now 20 years ago, Urban and Regional Planning, that concluded that the cost of repairing a dam is 3 to 5 times more expensive than removing it. Be nice to update that study and see what it says now. But historically, that has often driven those choices. It's not so much the potential environmental benefits as much as it is the economic opportunities. Just the numbers speak for itself, that it's a lot less expensive to remove it. So we're going to move forward and do that. There is a repair and removal fund in the Department of Natural Resources for the last several years. It's been funded at about $4 million. That's for both repair and removal. And it's always oversubscribed for both activities. So those are some of the things that kick in when a community inquires about this. but again, it is very much driven by what that local community wants to do and what the local discussion is, and that's why, to get back to as critical a role as the DNR played, and certainly I'm sure Sarah and I would say that the River Alliance has played in this, that the super critical role was local, the local groups, the local people like Joe and John and others that said, yes, we want to consider this. We want to look at this as an option. That's the critical piece that moves any of these ideas to fruition.
Absolutely, Todd. Well, and it's for almost any issue out there, right? Local involvement, local support is so important. Folks like Joe and others, they know these waters like the back of their hand, and their community members just as well. And that's a very important part of this work. I put in the chat a link to several pages if you're looking for resources. The DNR has a great page on dams that give you some background about the benefits of having a healthy river with dam removal. But there's also a dam search page. One thing we often tell folks is, start by looking at when was the dam inspected last? What's the current, as Todd said, what's its designation of high or low hazard? What kind of information is out there? Because sometimes that'll start to just give you some good background on that particular dam. And you can also search on the DNR's website to find out who your local DNR contact is, who could answer some questions for you to have that conversation if that's where your community's at. I also put a link to River Alliance's dam removal page. We have some other case studies of other stories there and other background information about, again, the pros and cons, the benefits of removing dams to help have a healthy river. Lisi, your question here, I think it would be best for Joe that's in the chat. Lisi's question is, are the folks that were so opposed before removal appreciative of what the restoration has produced? So Joe, what's the chatter around the bar and the coffee shops about this project now, and especially for maybe those folks who were skeptical in the beginning?
It is amazing. It is really surprising how accepting people are of it. People who were dead set opposed, people who said they were going to shoot Sarah, have come to me and said, you were right. The river is better because of that. I mean, they actually make a point of saying that they were on the other side of the issue and they were wrong. And you don't find people wanting to say they're wrong very often. It's not something any of us like to do, but so I think that's a real measure of how accepted it is. We never hear people, well, I had one guy in a barbershop one site, and I don't know what right was, but he was still pretty hostile. But all in all, the community is real supportive, and it's evidenced by the use of the river, the kayak rental place upstream, the number of people that are doing it. Just because I do have a mic on right now, just wanted to pipe in after Todd's and Sarah's thing. A big part of it is the collaboration. Melissa started it with talking about the collaboration in the film, but you need to have the partners, and find a civic organization. Kiwanis, who was interviewed in the film, has been a great partner through this by taking on the Riverwalk, which brought people down to the river, made people look at it. The river was in their backyard. People didn't understand what the river issues were. So the collaboration is so important. That's why it's good. I noticed Sarah in the audience earlier. It was good to see you there, because yeah, you were a real important part. The people in the video were all an important part. You need to build that community effort. I see Rick Eilertson just came in the bottom corner now. We formed organizations like the Citizens for Waterfront Revitalization, the Baraboo River Canoe Club. You know, some of these organizations had 5 people in them, but 5 people with a name and a voice in the community can get something done. And it's really worth the effort. It's a long, arduous project. You do take some heat over it, but it sure looks better now.
Thank you for sharing that, Joe. Again, it's been a long-term inspirational story, and there's so many others across the state of communities that have done similar work and across the nation. I do hope this inspires those communities that are considering, how to improve the health of the river and their community. And, as they're debating whether or not they should repair or remove a dam, as Todd said, the data shows it's usually more economical to remove than repair. And again, then you get all the extra benefits of a healthy river and a healthy community as well. We are coming up on 8 o'clock, and I want to thank you all for spending a portion of your evening with us. I want to thank again Melissa and the whole crew who produced the film, for Todd and Joe for sharing their reflections of this amazing project tonight, and Sarah for our surprise guest speaker tonight, sharing your reflections as well. And looking at quickly the participant list, I do know there's quite a few Baraboo and Sauk County folks that joined us tonight that, as Joe said, Rick and others, champions of this river and this community. So thank you for all of you've done to make the Baraboo a free-flowing river again. And as Stacy mentioned in the chat, you all and everyone else who registered for the event tonight will send out a follow-up, including the link to the film. So this film is available out there in the world, so you can watch it again. You can share it with others. And I'm sure Melissa and all those that were involved with the film would love to see this get even more eyes and inspiration from watching this great success story.
Hey, Allison.
Yep. The final words, Todd. Go right ahead.
One last quick thing as we conclude, I just have to share with folks an artifact which sits on my desk proudly. This little chunk of concrete says Oak Street Dam 2001. It's an odd hobby to collect chunks of old dams, but there you have it.
There may be a few other Riverlines alum who have similar artifacts. In fact, when we were cleaning the office one day, I'm forgetting which dam right now, but there was a larger chunk that I may have delivered to Helen's porch anonymously because she needed to have that souvenir. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us tonight.
Allison,
oh, yes.
May I interrupt 1 second? Because I think this is the appropriate crowd to do it with. Todd Ambs has announced his retirement. And I think this group should take the opportunity to thank him for his years of work for Wisconsin's wonderful waters. Thanks, Todd.
Well done, Lindsay. Absolutely. Todd has spent, over 4 decades across this country protecting our waters. And absolutely, Todd, well-deserved retirement. Congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. 6 days and counting.
Yeah. Not that you're counting. Wonderful. Well, with that note, thanks again for joining us, and have a lovely evening, y'all. This, summer evening we're having in December? Yeah, take care, everyone.